All right, we are on and ready. So welcome everyone out there. We have a big group that is on live on Facebook today, which is so nice, around the world. We have people from around the world that are joining us, which are part of this family. So if you're new, always welcome, welcome, welcome out there and here. It's so awesome to see this community expanding and growing, and there's so many incredible humans who are here that I meet every day in session. And I always like to say this, I have great faith in humanity and where we are going because of all of you and the people I get to meet with. Because let me tell you, there's some incredible stuff brewing beneath the surface and really already here, honestly, to choose from if it is your desire to choose it. That's kind of what I want to talk about today a little bit. But also just know, if you're here in the room and you haven't been with me before, we're going to be together for 2 hours. And I like to catch everybody up on some of the insights that I've personally been gathering and the channeled downloads that have been coming in. And it's been insane. Oh my gosh, dream state. How many of you getting visitation and dreams at night? And I always joke because I get so much of it, but I can never write it down. But lately I've put the pen and paper next to the bed and I've deliberately been getting up in the dark and scratching stuff down. It's been constant, and so helpful. So that's what I want to share today. But we do have a microphone in the room. So if you want to talk about anything in particular, while I'm just updating, feel free, raise your hand. And if you're out there, throw questions in the chat. For the first, 40 minutes or so, that can be personal questions, or I can bring in some conscious channeled insights. And then I will connect with the guides. So we'll do a trans-channeled experience. And I am a trans channel if you're new. And we will connect with whoever we need to connect with today to bring in whatever we need. And of course, we'll take questions there as well. All right. If you're new, we're with the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution. And we are a volunteer organization. We're focused on furthering human consciousness, which affects everything that is happening on the planet today. All of the things we want to change are a manifestation of unconsciousness. So this manifests for us in a variety of different efforts and projects, some that are in the works and will explode onto the scene very soon, others that we've had for quite some time, like our Conscious Youth Movement. And we meet with kids 18 to 9 years old throughout the globe who are having these conversations and need a forum to have them in a safe place. And that's what we provide. And we're also working on an alternative school for kids that will be coming up as it is so needed right now. We also have Weekend in Wizardry, which is coming up in July. That is a weekend intensive where the kids get together in physical, and that is still on. So if you have a kid who's interested in that and you want to fly out, we would love to have you. It is an amazing opportunity. These kids work with teachers, mentors from across the globe, myself on things like channeling, and Barb's going to do crystal wands with them and aura readings and just a variety of different topics. So super, super cool event. The adult version of that is in November here in the Metro Detroit area. Still on. We're still having the event. People are buying tickets. We have vendors. And again, this is like the adult version of the Weekend in Wizardry, where we bring all these topics together to explore. My personal mission is very similar to that of the organization, and everyone who participates with us has a personal mission carved out on the planet, which I think is so, so incredibly important. So I want to start by talking about a concept that's been coming in for me a lot with the guides personally, and as well as in session, regarding resistance and conflict, which is a massive theme we have going on the planet right now in all directions. Not very comfortable, obviously. And I want to start by saying that we've been having a lot of conversations about this in my inner circle community. And there are a lot of us who believe that we are in the midst of a massive density clearing or release of resistance. And that's quite obvious that we are right now releasing a lot of resistance. And I talked about this last time we were together last month. If you were in my Soul Alchemy course, which we did at the beginning of this year, I think. Yes, thank you. February, thank you. This was really a more personal journey into releasing that density and resistance and why that was happening on the planet. It's all about the pieces of us that are coming together from past timelines, past lives that now match our vibration. So we're literally becoming new people, and we're assembling the parts of that deliberately. So there's a vibrational process that begins to unfold when we are willing to consider new ideas, or we see ourselves differently, or we look at the world differently, and that's a shift in consciousness. I mean, we all know that at the basic level, that's a shift in consciousness. But in order for us to really step in and become that new person, that new identity, that new human collective, there is a bit of a lag time, and there's some things that we have to shore up vibrationally and physically. And the guides put it like this. Whatever we're integrating, so new beliefs, new ideas, we're considering we might take a new path, there's a new area of work we want to pursue, there's something else there that it's replacing. So there's a part of us that no longer is relevant, some energy, some belief, and that's the resistant part of us. Doesn't mean we're resisting the belief, but there's always some resistance to push us along. So I think a lot of us in this community, we look at what's happening today and we believe that resistance that's happening on the planet is what's ushering in the new earth. And I'm not 100% in agreement with that, because there are a lot of ways to maneuver within any resistant change, right? So as these new aspects of ourselves come in, there are parts of us that will start to come up, and we'll see them really clearly, right? So the perfect example of this that we've been talking about, I think on my Facebook page today in one of my posts, was family, friends, right? A lot of us have new beliefs, new ideas. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of information to consider. And some of us are butting heads with people in our family, with friends about these situations. Well, there's two ways to look at this, okay? And this is what I've been taught. Whenever that happens to me, okay, and first of all, believe me, like anyone who has a YouTube channel out there knows you're gonna face some resistance, right? You're gonna be people who don't like what you're saying. There are people who don't like what I wear. I mean, and sometimes I look at what I wear and go, wow, what was I thinking? Maybe they were right, right? But that resistance is so good, because what it does is it helps me reevaluate. So anytime there's someone in my life who's in resistance of me in some way, what the guides have taught me is this is a valuable opportunity for me to find out where I have instabilities that I have to shore up, right? So sometimes things come along to challenge who we've become so that we can step into it a little more vigorously. And so I always look at these opportunities in my life to say, where am I doing myself wrong? Like, where am I not standing fully in my truth? And, I did have some guides come in recently and personally challenge me to say, there's some things you're holding back on. And they were right. Absolutely right. And I thought, if I am going to take this mission on, even to hold back a little bit because it might not be what everyone wants to hear, isn't really doing the mission justice. I mean, and it's not that I believe that what I'm here to teach is right for everybody, or what I'm here to channel is for everybody to hear. As a matter of fact, I think it is so amazing that we have so many channels on the planet right now that are showing up in different lights with different messages, because we obviously have a population who across the board has different ideas, beliefs, and are at different points in their evolution. So it's natural we're going to have all of this come to the surface. But if I'm not willing to fully stand in that truth, there's some resistance in me that's always going to hold back on what I'm here to do. So I want to take this out to the planet in a moment. And I'm going to put this all together. I'm going to try to do my best. I'm human. Sometimes I get angry, go down the rabbit hole. I redirect myself. I try really hard to bring in the messages and relay them in a way that everyone can take away benefit. But sometimes I make mistakes. So I leave the space for myself to interpret this, and also my human self to perhaps not get it fully right. But here's the thing. we become new people. We become a new race of humans, right? If you go back and you listen to the messages that my guides were sharing, even back in 2017, they were talking about hierarchies dismantling. And that was happening within us first. Where we still had resistance to who we had become, there was going to be some resistant force that was going to meet that and push us further. So let's just look at one example of this right now, which is a brand new example that just happened yesterday. We have a population on the planet who now is unable to receive health insurance for a specific reason, whatever that is that the government has decided. Well, here's what the guides would say. The insurance model, health insurance, let's just take health insurance, is built upon an old set of beliefs, an old criteria. It no longer matches who we have become. And everyone has to maneuver this to their own comfort and to their personal situation. And I'm not saying those of you out there who are relying on health insurance to, for some disease or illness should abandon the whole thing. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of instabilities in that model. We've become people who no longer believe, for the most part in this community anyway, in the pharmaceutical model. We know that that's been harming us. We now understand that there are so many diseases that are related to toxicity in the body, right? So we have these beliefs about disease and toxicity and alternative healing and how to go about that. But we might still be holding on to something that no longer supports that on the planet anymore. So now we have some resistance. There's a decision made at some upper level that we're going to change something, and we're going to make it harder for you to get what you need. So we can now get involved in that decision and we can fight up against it. And if you're doing that, you may be here to do that. But what the goal is always is to create something new, to reveal it, to choose it, or you might be someone who's here to actually forward this new model, whatever it might be, right? I mean, for me personally, and my decisions are in no way, meant to be yours. A long time ago, I decided that health insurance was not serving me. The doctors I was going to, the way I was treating my body, it didn't make sense for me to get involved in that program because it wasn't serving me. So I carved out a way to work with doctors in a financial arrangement that suited what I need without having to go that restrictive path. Again, that's not for everybody, right? But that's what the resistance in me in that one area was causing me to do. I could have attempted to go that path, but it would not have in any way been beneficial for my body, my health, my spirit, my mind, my consciousness. There's something about that I was giving up in the process, right? So that's what I think is happening right now, is we're butting up against a resistant force that is attempting to navigate us into the new that we already know is there, that many of us are already involved with, but we have to choose harder. We have to believe in enough to solidify, right? So let's take this another step further in terms of resistance. And this was a pretty strong message that came in the other day. It's posted on my Facebook wall today. When we meet resistance with more resistance, the universe is going to give us more resistance. And the reason for that is we are meant to grow and change through a positive manifestation, right? The balance of yin and yang and light and dark, a little bit of resistance moves us in the direction of freedom and joy and happiness and health, right? And we know this in our personal lives. We have astrological influences that come in, like planetary ones we're about to embark on here very soon and already are starting to brew, that can be pretty chaotic, and can cause us a lot of turbulence. And in one astrological influence there are a spectrum of opportunities. We don't just have to let that energy carry us into more turbulence and fear and violence or pain or whatever it is that is caused by that. We have a spectrum of opportunities or options that we can choose in any one influence in how to operate. But it's always going to get us to the same result, right? Astrological influences come to move us to something new, and we'll eventually get there. But the path of getting there is what we're choosing, right? So if you put this in the context of resistance, we can look at resistance as an opportunity to carve out that path of least resistance, or we can choose the path of more. Either way, we're going to get to the same outcome. We're either going to experience more resistance, or we're going to ease our way into a new experience. Neither path is easy. Anytime we have to make a change, or we're considering that a new timeline has to land, it's not easy. You know, there are parts of us that in this whole collective experience are so personally intertwined that it could never be the same for anybody. So in a sense, if we have collective resistance and we are a unique group of humans, there's something in this that we're all meant to change. And if we start with ourselves, we're going to find that path far easier than if we're looking at a target. On the planet today, we have a lot of targets that are moving pretty fast. This is a very fast-moving train and energy. And I think in that respect, even though it feels out of our control, it's purposeful and it's good. Yet, I want to go back to an understanding that I came into when I first started channeling, which really blew my socks off because I was new to all this stuff. I know you guys have been in this conversation for a long time, many of you longer than me. But we were working at Flower of Life to come up with some ideas of how to change certain things on the planet. And at that point, it was GMO food and fluoride in the water, Common Core, right? Smart meters. And I was so stuck. I was like, man, all this bad stuff, you know, like what? How in the world are we going to address all of these big things? So I channeled on it. And that's the first time I heard the concept of reptilian consciousness, where my guide said, until humanity understands that there is a consciousness that is driving all of this, none of it will change. You can entangle yourself within it as much as you want. And there are some of you out there who have missions directly involved with all of these things. But as a whole, there's no way that every single one of us could entangle ourselves in all of these things and make a difference. So I sat on that message for a couple of weeks because I was kind of stunned. It's the first time I'd ever heard about this. And then I had a good friend say, you should look up David Icke. I was like, okay. Which, freaked me out a little bit more. But what the guides were explaining was this consciousness works through our creative energy. They siphon our creative energy for their own. And this was kind of confusing for me for a long time, because it sounds so deliberate and dystopian, right? Like there's these reptilians who are siphoning our energy, right? And I mean, come on, got some healers out there, I know, who clear those things and see those things, and I see them too, and they are real. However, think about this now in terms of what's happening on the planet. I had a bell go off the other day when I was looking around at everything that was taking place about how reptilian consciousness is siphoning our creative energy and putting it to use for their own agenda. And I cannot say this enough, and it is not to dissuade you from any protest, peaceful or otherwise. But every single message that has come through me in the last few weeks, in the middle of my sleep, has alluded to the fact that we are being manipulated by a consciousness that is using our creative energy for a result that they want. So how do we maneuver this? It's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. So at the same time all this is coming in, I'm doing this course, Lightworker 15, if you're in it. It's all about vibrational alignment. We're working with the feminine masters, Mary Magdalene and Divine Mother, but last Monday we had Isis, and she talked all about what true manifestation is and how it operates. And she was alluding to the fact that we already have things in our lives, collectively and singularly, that we are meant to raise up, pinpoint, and expand. But what tends to happen oftentimes is we get stuck on the negative stuff and we try to manifest that away. So we focus our manifestation on what we're in lack of or what's breaking down, and we try to visualize the new, or we get really caught up in the old. And what she's saying is everyone needs to take a personal inventory of what's working in their lives. The things that they've already chosen or want to create or know that they're here to do, and focus on those because they have meaning. They have so much meaning. We are here as a unique piece of a collective puzzle. And the only way we get that wrong is if we do the same thing that everyone else is doing. So we're kind of getting drawn in to a situation that's taking away our individuality and siphoning our unique creative currency to fight up against a system and try to make change. Again, I'm not saying that change isn't going to happen. We'll probably get to the same result, which I have complete and total faith is going to be the right one. But to make it a little easier, what we can do is choose to operate in the things that already work, or the things that we believe are the replacements of what's not working, and raise those up. Not an easy path. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices. Sometimes our family and friends don't agree with the choices that we're making and the things that we're doing. But that's how the new earth truly comes about, right? All of this stuff, this hierarchical stuff that doesn't fit us anymore, is going to become harder and harder to deal with. And we already see that, right? Everything that's being put into place is sending us in circles to comply, or making us fight in order to get them to comply with what we want. When we're no longer the people that fit in that model. And that's why the fight is there, right? And it's a good fight when we put it in the right context, because we can use it as currency and inspiration to do what we're here to do, create what we're here to create. We have brilliant, brilliant doctors out there. You're going to see one in a little while, multidimensional Dr. Elia, who's here. We have healers, we have teachers, we have parents who are creating co-ops and alternative schools. I mean, it is happening all over the globe. You know, one of the most inspiring things that happened to me over the last couple of weeks was being on a parent call, parent forum, with parents from around the globe. And they schooled me in what it is to raise a child on the planet today consciously. They have amazing tools at their disposal, and they're taking their kids right out of the system and carving out a path for them uniquely. And I think that's so incredibly important to consider, that we can take that and we can apply it in all areas. It's already there, right? We have a new financial system that's brewing beneath the surface. We have a new healthcare system that many of us are already a part of. There's been a lot of instabilities there. But now the resistance is here to move us into those areas where we've been a little unstable. Maybe we haven't been willing to choose it, or our family had a problem with us choosing it, or we weren't really sure if that was a path for us to go, or there was a safer path for us. I'm not here to bring this message through and bring up any fear, right? I think we're always taken care of, always taken care of. But in order for that to happen, for that source field around us to really show us the new resource, we have to be willing to choose it. And I personally don't think that it exists in the old. Any questions, thoughts, things I can comment on? Yes.
The human emotional self.
Yeah.
All these changes that we're all going through right now, the breaking apart of a relationship.
Yeah.
And it's not because you don't care about that person or love that person. It's just that your frequency has changed and you both kind of know it. And you go, or for me, but probably other people maybe have felt this too. I feel like my emotions, the old gut feeling thing, like right in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and you just kind of, you have to process it. You just kind of sit with it because there's like a loss or a void that's there.
Yeah.
And then you start to feel better and ask my guides for help or whatever. But my question is this just an earth plane thing that we have to go through this emotional pain and we know there's expansion on the other side of it? Or are we going to eventually evolve out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And are there any other dimensional, that has something similar does there always have to be that like, through your body in order to get the expansion?
Yeah, awesome question. And I'll tell you why there's that, it comes from the fact that like we've actually been so suppressed in our emotional bodies that we're finally figuring out how to blend and use them as a tool. Like that's where that comes from, right? That's what the guides constantly talk about is there's been a suppression of emotion. We don't want to feel. We've been forced through the mind. So we become thinkers, right? We become very physically focused, and it's very convenient for us to suppress emotion. And hey, some of us have been through some awful traumas, and in addition to that, we carry those traumas in our DNA. There's a lineage. Everything that's happening on the planet, there's an archetypal lineage we're working out. Doesn't matter if you're a part of that generation or that race, or if you've been here at times when it's been suppressed, it's there. So this is all, having to unwind. But I don't think that as humans, we're a lower race in terms of our emotional body. I want to put it back in the context of this reptilian consciousness. That's what stifled it. And there's a lot of information about this in my book. The Pleiadians, for example, are just like ambassadors of emotion. They understand it. They've integrated it. This comes into a lot of my session work with people who are very Pleiadian oriented, is that what they have understood is to allow emotions in real time, consciously, is like the highest form of manifestation that you can operate in. And the reason for that is you're always coming back to neutral. So sometimes we get into an argument with somebody or something happens to us, we suppress it. We don't want to cause conflict, so we push it down, right? And then what happens is other situations, either from past lives or this incarnation, with the same emotional imprint start to wind around it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And what they've come to understand is if we can constructively express emotion in relationships, right, families, whatever it might be, we're always going to come back to neutral. We're going to always be in coherence and be in harmony. So that doesn't negate sadness or fear or anger. That actually includes it, But I think that's what we're experiencing right now is an opportunity to come into balance with that. So, where we were going with this conversation in my Inner Circle program, our community was, is this a collective release of density? Or, is it not? I think it is for the most part. But here's the thing. With the soul alchemy part we were just talking about, we can be clearing density and we can grab onto it and bring it back. Right? So what we're here to do is kind of bear witness and hold space for the emotions that are clearing. But what happens is oftentimes we judge ourselves or we judge others. We kind of get entangled in it, and then it doesn't clear. Right? So that's a big factor in what's playing out right now is how we get involved in the conflict and how we interact in the different opinions of others and what we feel about it and being real with that. Because unless we have the ability to do that very consciously, we're still holding back on a part of our technology that I think is so beneficial and meant to come with us, which is the emotional body. I mean, when you think about it too, emotional body and spiritual body, that's our feminine. So right now we're learning how to use the feminine differently. And I've said this a couple of times, we always think of feminine as like this soft kind of, like, it's no joke, man, right? It's no joke. Feminine is no joke. I mean, it's like bringing up that stuff from the past and learning how to deal with it in a compassionate way, which isn't easy on the planet right now, So yeah, I think we're working that out. But I don't think we're a lower race because of it. I think we've been suppressed and conditioned, and we've been focused into the mind and not the heart, and we don't know what to do with it right now. Yeah, hope that helped answer your question. Anyone else? Questions online?
Most of them are for channeling, but there's one that's...
Okay.
Where can we find out more information about the work these parents do?
Oh, so we were just talking earlier about Conscious Youth. Kayla Casey is actually here. She runs our parenting group as well. So we do have a parenting group on Facebook, and they are the parents of our Conscious Youth program kids, right, who are here or who are all over the globe. We have remote, every couple months, you'd say, parent forums?
The next one will probably be the end of July.
Okay, so about every couple of months. Every 2 months, we have a parent forum online. So watch our Facebook pages for that, or you can email us if we have a list putting together, in the background. We'll put you on the list. But it's a great opportunity to connect with other parents and ask questions or share stories and ideas. Man, it's an amazing group. Really amazing group. All right, you good? Okay, all right. All right, so we'll do a channeling. We'll bring in whoever we need to bring in for whatever they need to say. And then I'll take questions. Those of you who haven't experienced my channeling before, we get a general message, and we work with a variety of beings, councils, collectives, ascended masters, whoever needs to come in for whatever purpose. And I have no idea who we'll speak with today, although, well, I shouldn't say that. I think it might be the Sirians. As I was working with the Sirians and Hathor before I left the house today. All right. All right. And if you can't keep up with the language or the messages, just sit in the energy, being a willing participant in receiving. Can't get this wrong. All right. We are going to work with the Syrian Collective today, and I welcome them as they step forward. And it is our great honor, of course, to address all of you in this time. We are so very pleased to see that so many of you are willing to become one with each other and one with yourselves in a process that is collectively unfolding and is designed to bring about harmony. Although that harmony may be at times unreachable by many of you, we come to inject our ideas as to how you may find harmony in a very difficult challenge on the planet, and how you may choose it as an opportunity to become the greatest asset in your spiritual tool belts. We start with a story of our own collective and how we have evolved, knowing, of course, that we have been present in the galactic universe far longer than humans have. We have a vault of Akashic knowledge at our disposal. What many of you do not consider is that the challenges you face and walk through as a human and as a community in general are offered to future generations as currency for changing the planet. And we bring this to your attention now as important to note because you cannot get it wrong. In other words, everything that you are willing to face, every challenge that you encounter, and every joyful and exciting experience as well, becomes a part of a very intricately woven vibrational frequency that is shared amongst all others. We, as the Sirians, have studied and pondered about our own Akashic records. We, as non-physical, have focused into those records to see where we could find the most beneficial patterns from the past and use them as an implement or tool to raise our vibration. And here's what we have found. Even at times when our star system was going through transition, similar to what you are today, there were moments of joy that could be capitalized on and were very potently changing the timeline beneath our own vision. We could see the way that the challenge existed in the Akashic records, but how these moments of joy, like a wave pattern, would intersect with them. And even when there was no deliberate focus on making a change at hand. In fact, if there was a deliberate focus in a different direction than the change itself, there was the most potent manifestation that changed its reality. Many times what you perceive is that what you are doing is not of effect. And there are times when you may focus outside of what is happening collectively on your planet. And we often notice that the judgment of the self in these times for choosing a more joyful experience brings shame and burden and responsibility. You may be met also with an outside force that is judging you as well for not doing what is in alignment with what others perceive as best. Yet, what we've noticed in our own Akashic records is that when we were collectively focused on changing some reality because we were in resistance of what it was, this created more resistance in the frequency stream such that it was amplified. So what we began to teach in our history that still remains today in our star system is that our collective reality benefits most from our present moment awareness into some very supportive and desired experience individually. Unlike some other collective councils and star systems, we have decided to maintain very unique physical and non-physical characteristics. We may show up for you with similar ones, yet there is both within us an energetic signature that runs parallel as well as opposite to all others in our star system. And this is very similar to your own design. Of course, as a human race, there are going to be similarities between all of you, but it is the differences to be cherished, not capitalized on as a reason to become similar again. And we have found that when we teach this to our younger generations, it already being embedded within their DNA, it breaks open a whole new potential for our star system, even the ones that are in the quote-unquote older generation to benefit from. It is this much freedom that we see as the platform for the most loving and joyful experience. And this is why as Sirians, we have come to be known or related to in a sense of joy. It is not because we recklessly choose that and unknowingly let go of the problems at hand, so much as we are changing the problems at hand through the most joyous effect. And this is what we desire for all of you. But we want to make it a bit more clear in terms of your earthly relationships, knowing that sometimes joy is looked at as a waste of time if it is not directly affecting change. There is something within all of you that you have come to offer. This could never look like any other on the planet. And it is what brings you the most joy, but at the same time must affect the collective in a positive way. If you deviate from this too much, what you may find is you're strengthening the potentials that you do not desire to experience any longer. And it doesn't take your full attention in order to do this. Small bursts or times of focus on these very individual and unique aspects of who you are and what you desire make incredible non-physical impacts on the physical manifestations that are already brewing as potentials to land tomorrow. And as we have brought this message through, we have integrated a code within you that helps you to reinstall it and integrate it, to remember it as your personal truth, and to let go of anything that is in resistance of it. And we're pleased to take questions.
What dimensions are our higher self and our lower self in?
We are the Pleiadian Collective. It would be very difficult for us to answer this question collectively as well as individually at this moment, but we can give a generalization because we understand that all of you are at varying speeds and decisions on your planet as souls. First, it's important to note that the higher self is a collective vehicle. This higher self is always choosing the dimensional reality that best serves the soul. We see the higher self as being somewhat of a guardian of your soul, meaning that you are never walking alone in this life. There is a higher power installed within you that is meant to guide you into the most beneficial and loving experiences that you can have. But looking at your collective today, there are so many of you who have activated the higher self in different dimensions. Some of you are still focused on the third dimension, which is not a judgment. It is simply a more material way of looking at your collective earth. Others have installed a higher self vision that is more fifth or even seventh dimensional in nature. This is always meant to change because as your ascension process takes place and unfolds, you will find yourself moving through different dimensions. But the interesting part of this question is that a collective higher self is what holds a dimensional reality upon Earth. In other words, there's a universal equation that understands the dimensional access of every higher self that is present within a human vehicle and takes a measurement of that to hold it vibrationally on the earth. So there's somewhat of a tug of war happening right now between higher selves that only perceive a more physically focused earth and others who have adopted a more fifth dimensionally focused vision. Now at the soul level, this is also an interesting question to consider. And there are a couple of parts of your technology that have the ability to keep your soul in a specific dimension. We'll start with the DNA. And we know that many of you understand there are carbon-based strands and crystalline strands, those being earthly focused and others being cosmically focused. As a soul, your decision to perceive yourself in a certain light, the outer world or other humans in a certain light, is a bandwidth of consciousness that relates to activating your DNA. Each DNA strand is a replica of a dimensional frequency that's available to you within. So sometimes a soul is still focused perhaps karmically on a process that they have yet to clear, or they see themselves as a part of a third dimensional reality that they desire to hold on to. And in this respect, they may only be operating in a small number of DNA strands that allows a third dimensional energy to be present. Other souls have taken advantage of new spiritual practices and processes, and they are using those as a tool to activate their DNA. And what's happening through this DNA activation is they are perceiving far more than perhaps the soul who is physically focused. In this explanation, there can be a soul that's moving through space and time dimensionally throughout the day. Some of you are timeline jumping. Some of you are deliberately timeline traveling. And others have completely grounded a fifth dimensional reality at the soul level. It is very rare to see that. However, we see it in varying levels and in different geographic regions as holding a new grid in place. So again, and we will summarize by saying, no one soul could ever operate in the same dimension at the same time because they are vibrational and constantly ascending. While at the same time, there's a collective scale through which the earth itself in your entire race grounds a dimension. Right now, that is very unstable. And you can see where different dimensional realities exist upon the same earth. This is the split of timelines that we often refer to that you are all going through together.
My question has to do with religion. What is the overall role of religion? And as some of us are moving on and start to see some agendas behind their creation, it's a little difficult. And the other part of the question is for somebody that's just awakening and is in a long lineage of being, let's just say, Catholic, and raising kids, knowing how easy it is to get trapped in the guilt and the rules and the structure of it, perhaps even being ready to move out of it themselves, but are stuck in that in-between place. What can you do? How can you make sure the child doesn't get trapped as well as yourself?
Yes, we are Divine Mother, and we're so pleased that you brought this question to us at this time. And we want to start in a very grand vision to help you understand how any construct, like religion, for example, or government, comes to be a physically manifested experience on your planet. All of you innately have an essence that is directed through consciousness, through perception. You may relate to the definition of belief. The only way for a human to evolve is to consider what it believes or what its truth has come to be and allow that truth or belief to constantly evolve. So there is a part of your human structure and your human nature that is meant to always consider new belief. But what happens on your planet oftentimes is that the belief that you have becomes communicated with another. Perhaps a teacher becomes manifested, and there are others who have the same belief. This is universal law at play, where magnetics are drawing humans together who are considering similar beliefs. As these beliefs are practiced and discussed, there is a structure that begins to form around them, first in non-physical. And of course, that structure leads to physical manifestations. Now, the core of religion in the minds of many comes from the very first human beliefs being understood. That there was something within that was such a strong part of their consciousness that they had to share it with others. And there was an inherent fear or resistance that if others didn't believe in the same truth, that there would be some instability. And because of this, religion became more focused on ensuring the same belief than it did sharing cooperative ones. And this is how there has been an interesting diversion away from speaking and believing in a soul's unfolding and experience, and putting in place a construct to entrain it. Now, not every religion that has manifested on your planet is doing harm. So it is first important to acknowledge that there are some humans and some religions that are designed to inquiry inwardly about the relationship to God. And it's natural that religious beliefs would have taken on this understanding of God itself, because that is the inherent soul question, is it not? Who is God in relationship to humanity or to a soul? But what's interesting to us is that the manifestation of a more physical construct of religion is running parallel to a more physically focused collective. And this is directly related to resource. So where many of the early religions went awry was when they began to focus on physical resource. Because any time that physical or material resource becomes a part of a belief or a teaching, there's an inherent instability that permeates the purity of that teaching. So no longer do we have humans coming together to inquiry and discuss and share. Now we have an outside force that's present that may be creating some instability, or as we have spoken about in many transmissions, hierarchy. So religion began to gradually move in the direction of hierarchical and material focus by capitalizing on belief as opposed to using it as a tool to relate. So what many of you are experiencing right now, as you are becoming more conscious and looking at past religious beliefs with new eyes, is not that perhaps the belief at the time you encountered it was wrong, so much as the outer influence of its focus took it in a direction that may have changed your belief. And we know that there is the burden of judgment that is utilized as a tool in many of these religions. Because if there is no way to comply in order to sustain material, then the religion itself, or what is formed in religious practice, is no longer serving the agenda that it has taken on. So the children come in a very interesting way, because if you consider that children are born in the purity of connection to God and Source, they are most vulnerable from steering away from exploring their own beliefs by some outer force. And we know that children on the planet today come in with a higher perspective of what God is than what religion has evolved to be today. They can see beyond some of the languages and the programs and the translations of history that are taking place deliberately at this juncture. So if religion is to continue on your planet, what needs to take place is a complete dismantling and separation from material. In other words, if beliefs come together and are strengthened by other beliefs, something very positive can be created. But if those beliefs are putting individuals in a position to weaken their creative offering, or to put them in the position to believe something that causes a less than or less worthy focus, then what begins to happen is the belief structure itself becomes tainted. So what we see happening on your planet in terms of religion is not unlike what's happening in many other aspects of your collective earth reality. There is an instability within religious structure that is not unlike the instability in the hierarchy in every other structure that is currently at a crossroads. In order to allow this to shift, there's an alchemical process that many of you will go through, and it's called spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening comes when we consider the self in relationship to God, not God in relationship to the self. And these are the tools that many of you are using to mentor and teach children today, which will perhaps not completely obliterate religion or some of the teachings of religion, but retranslate them into a different form. So we see the most advantageous way of relating to perhaps many of us who walked at the time of Christ, or those other religions that have become a focal point for humanity, is to enable them to be translated in whatever way a soul desires. And that open translation is what is happening as a common theme on your planet. This is a definition of consciousness. When you are perceiving something in a new light, it must change. And it changes within first. And then outside of you changes as well. So honoring the children who are coming to the planet today with a more pure and perhaps spiritual connection to the concept of God or universe enables religion to reconfigure before your eyes, because they will have a direct impact on what it has come to be.
So 2 of my friends have recently shared with me that with this pause over the last couple months, they have actually grown mightily in their own spirituality and their own connection with divine and themselves in such beautiful ways. And yet where the challenge is now is to integrate back into the world again, that they're having a really hard time to just don't even want to really be around people like they used to be. And just wanted to ask some recommendations of how we can be in our true essence as we keep expanding and growing, and also be comfortable with the rest of the world that hasn't awakened yet.
Yes, we are Michael, and we're very pleased to step forward. We understand, of course, that so many of you have gone to the opposite extreme of diving into spiritual practice, that some of the physical focus as you're awakening looks completely different than it did before the practice started. And that is a positive we see on your planet, of course, because it's been a part of your imbalance in that so many have been physically focused that they have negated the understanding of their own truth. Yet we understand the difficulties you face as well, and we want to speak to it first in vibrational terms because there is an integration process that is taking place. And the discomfort that many of you feel grounding back into a physical reality is only the experience of the lag time of your physical reality catching up to what you've vibrationally put in motion. So it isn't that there's something that you're doing wrong, so much as there is a waiting period where what you fit into before on the planet is reconfiguring to match your new vibration. And although this discomfort exists, it's important to give a couple of recommendations, because we look at the collective transition that's taking place as one of the most incredible for those of you who've decided to incarnate at this time. The split of timelines has been referred to in this transmission previously, and we want to speak to what we see it being in terms of spirituality. There is a propensity for humans in the third dimension to choose suffering. And this has been ingrained within many of you from birth. There are responsibilities you must uphold to the detriment of your desires. There are certain conditions that you have to conform to regardless of how they fit within. All of these things have put you in a focus of negating your personal truth, to the point where many of you have been suffering in timeline experiences subconsciously, not even realizing that you are walking a path that was completely opposite of the one that your soul desired. So we see the split of timelines being the willingness to challenge the areas where you've most restricted yourself because of some outer condition, and freeing yourself to become the expression of your soul. Now, these two paths look quite different on the planet today because some of you may feel an inherent blame or even jealousy at times for operating in a way that is so vibrationally aligned with your heart and your soul that others cannot conceive. They may even blame you of not upholding some responsibility that they still see as a part of their earth experience. And this is something that we don't take lightly because we see how it affects your vibration. What it does is it often triggers those parts of you that you've worked so hard to spiritually overlay and give you the opportunity to see what's left of you to acknowledge. In other words, the challenge or the suffering of an awakening soul not fitting into the earth is often coming at the hands of some resisted emotion about their own spiritual path, that they are deviating from something that was before, that others expect them to be, or they're no longer willing to carry out the same actions or activities that loved ones have come to know. And it comes from a very loving place. As a soul, many of you have been trained as pleasers. It is something that you see as a part of your purpose here on the planet, to please others and to uphold their comfort. But a true soul contract between any soul, whether it be a family member, a friend, a community member, is embedded in personal truth. And it's embedded in constant motion. So when we look at some of the most difficult challenges in relationships today, what we see is a suppression of the willingness of a soul to hold up their truth for the comfort of another. And in that, there is no honoring the contract. So our best advice is to stay as compassionate and loving as you can when you glimpse back at those who are unwilling to walk the path with you, but honor and uphold your truth to the degree that it speeds up the process of landing the new. Because there are some of you who easily get stuck in the transition because it is such a challenging one. But when you're negotiating that path in the highest love and respect for all, as well as the self, you begin to navigate it very coherently and in balance.
So my question regards balancing the masculine archetypes, especially, not specifically, the king and warrior and their negative aspects of being controlling and overworking oneself.
Yes, we are the Pleiadians, and we recognize these archetypal patterns are a great focus for many of you right now. If you consider that these are not just as they show themselves to be in certain archetypes, and see below them as to the pattern and how they fit together, you have the ability to maneuver this time on your planet far greater. And we want to use those as our explanation of how those patterns are being changed. The king, for example, is an interesting archetype relating very similarly to the question of religion. Those that were in power, for example, at times in ancient civilizations, came into that position of power because of the amount of love and respect that they held for their people. It is not unlike in some of the higher councils and dimensional realities that many of us exist in. These councils come into being because they are holding the highest integrity in making decisions for all. But there came a point in time where material wealth and focus changed the archetype. And a king, for example, began to become imbalanced in its presence. There are stories on both sides of the equation. Most of those that have been revealed to humanity have been the ones that have been very hierarchical or patriarchal. And the reason is these match your current vibration. You are literally uncovering history and stories of what was based on how your DNA is matching them. So as you know, you have a very patriarchal focus and history on this planet, and this is coming to a crossroads at this time. So as you look back and understand that some of you carry the prototype for that DNA genetic in your own patterns, you're coming to realize there are parts of you that have been tricked or fooled into only one side of history. So the question becomes how to change the archetype and get into alignment with perhaps being the king or the ruler of your own life, or one that is in the highest benefit of all. And this is how we often look at archetypal transition or healing. When you are installing the archetype of a god, gods can be looked at in many lights. There have been many stories and much history shared on your planet about wars that gods have started. But it is not that history that you want to relate with. It is the God within you that is calling forth the matching vibration of any archetype of that God. So the question is not, how do we change it on a mass scale? Because the only way it changes on a mass scale is how we associate with it individually first. The patriarchal theme that runs through many of the archetypes, the two especially that you have brought up, are the ones that are the most important focus at this time. And this is why, of course, there's an overabundance of the draw to a more feminine history and feminine masters. It's coming to contradict and to balance that, and it is not based on gender. It is only based upon frequency. So any masculine and feminine balance is all based on perception. Do you perceive yourself as the ruler of your own experience and creating something that isn't just for you, but in the highest good of all? In this way, you're literally drawing a new archetypal pattern to you that is already present within the DNA, but it's yet to be revealed. It exists in the Akashic field, and it signals something within you to alchemically change. And we see this happening on many fronts. It is happening in all areas of your physical experience. These archetypes, it is no mistake that they would relate to some of you so personally, because it's showing you where you have deviated from the self and taken on something that wasn't natural or imbalanced. Any balancing of an archetype comes through the realization of the archetype that you choose. So feminine and masculine in a collective sense is something that we see constantly changing in every moment on this planet. What's interesting to us is that the feminine sometimes surges so out of control that you lose sight of your physical ability to affect change. And sometimes the masculine within you is so present that it's in fear of its feminine. But we come to explain that there is room for deviation. Even in ancient civilizations, masculine and feminine being imbalanced may not have been a constant state, but it was understood how to bring that constant state into being with some spiritual practice. So we recommend that spiritual practice to you, not out of balance, of course, but in perfect synchronicity with physical action, because that is how you hold that constant state of balance, allowing it to deviate at times where necessary, perhaps where there is a situation in your life that requires a bit more feminine than masculine, or a bit more masculine and feminine, but always in, we don't like to use the word control, but always in your power to balance it at will.
Okay, my question relates to artificial intelligence. What is it? Is it from the reptilian consciousness you mentioned? Is it from source? Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, we're very pleased. We're the Pleiadians. This conversation is very similar to the theme that has run through many of these questions. Artificial intelligence or technology on your planet is a manifestation of your consciousness. To some degree, we look at the source field around you as being signaled in a very narrow way. For example, you have been forced into conditions or criteria that have been very physically focused. And because of that, your desires are always heard, but sometimes they're not always met in the best suited way for your higher self and the desire of all others. So we look at the manifestation of technology on your planet as meeting a requirement, as meeting a need. Much of this has come from your need to be very efficient human beings, to communicate in a faster way, and to actually connect with others across the globe, to shore up the gap in physical between many of you who are separate in a grand amount of miles. We even look at Akashic records and access to history as being a theme that's present in the manifestation of AI, even though seemingly quite different than what's taken place on your planet. Your desire to have access to information is something that's been a very important request that has manifested material. But remember, every manifestation on your planet matches your consciousness and comes embedded within a certain dimensional imprint. Not unlike religion, where beliefs came together and vibrational patterns were formed, and the more that belief was shared and talked about, those vibrational patterns gained steam. We see AI as having a similar non-physical force. There's a lot of communication and desire and interest in these different technologies. But there is, yes, of course, a reptilian consciousness on your planet, as you have mentioned in your intention, that is a consideration in how technology is being tampered with. Now, we want to take you back to Atlantis. We know that many of you are familiar with the technologies that were present in ancient Atlantis. These technologies were designed specifically to work with elemental properties in that civilization. Those elemental properties existed within all beings, not unlike they exist within you. And there was a constant frequency field that was maintained. And this frequency field was to accentuate the consciousness of the entire civilization, such that everyone that participated in Atlantis was receiving some beneficial upgrade from technology. You can see the parallel to what's taking place on your planet today, perhaps in the opposite respect. There was a tampering with Atlantean technologies by some who desired to send different signals for the purpose of their own material gain, or to tap into elemental properties in a way that was vindictive. This was the fall of Atlantis. So we see some of the technologies that you've manifested as having higher and lower potentials. And because you are in the middle of a timeline split and a dimensional shift, there are a myriad of potentials that exist for these technologies. the reptilian consciousness that currently has a strong hold on them isn't going to go away just because it is focused upon in the realm of technology. These technologies have connections to all other things on your planet, such as physical health, such as the lowering of consciousness, such as your ability to manifest material and currencies. There is a data aspect very similar to accessing records. So the way to interact with technology actually becomes the path through which it will change. And we'll first say that those of you who have stepped outside of the third dimension and who are choosing technologies and platforms that are more open source, for example, or focused on integrity, have already set a chain of events in motion to ground better potentials. But at the same time, we acknowledge that the fear that's being sent as a signal through these technologies is actually hampering your ability to change them as well. So taking the path of changing your own chemistry and vibration in relationship to the outer world is a very similar response to the archetypal one that was asked previously, that can help maneuver your own personal relationship and make an impact on the collective. And the way to do this is to find ways to always upgrade your frequency, to keep your frequency pure, but to also detoxify any vibrational manifestations that happen from these technologies and to direct them in ways that are very positive. For example, we see many technologies on your planet actually being utilized as tools to advance the earth forward. It is how that technology is interacted with that changes the imprint. So we as a collective aren't necessarily in fear of where you're heading with AI, but also not unlike the previous message that was transmitted, want to explain there are a variety of different paths to get to the same end. And how you personally interact with technology has everything to do with how it will change.
It seems as though twin flames are coming in now and awakening with a very special purpose and mission to lead humanity into 5D. Looking for words of wisdom from the collective on this now.
Yes, so we're the Sirians and we're pleased to step back in. The twin flame energy is something that is very potent on your planet right now, but we actually see it just being the tip of the iceberg of what you'll experience in the coming years. And the reason for this has a lot to do with your cosmic DNA, as well as the calling of your soul. Many of you have been attracting partners at the earth level, and much of this has been focused on soul karma or earthly contracts that needed to change in relationship to consciousness and ascension. In addition to this, you were encapsulated in a grid system that kept you replaying history. Much of that history was challenging relationship patterns from the past. But now that a new grid has been stabilized and many of you have exited that matrix in your personal lives, what's happening in your technology and on the earth on a mass scale is a reorganization magnetically to reconnect with cosmic families. And it isn't just in the light of twin flames that this is happening in terms of romantic partnerships, although we see that being a logical manifestation as well. And we'll start with the relationship aspect of this. What twin flame partners do is awaken key codes and activate you vibrationally. And this is a very important part of an intimate relationship between twin flame partners. The cellular level holds codes and information that is unlocked through a cosmic door of partnership at that level. At the same time, we notice that twin flame partnerships have a very lengthy cosmic past. So this is a different level of Akashic history that you're touching into and matching right now, which is a very positive sign for humanity. Not because your earthly history is wrong or bad, but because cosmic history is a part of your DNA. You were seeded by interdimensionals, and you're bringing back that original blueprint in masculine and feminine balance in terms of a twin flame partner. Many of the twin flames that you will interact with may not come and be with you for your entire incarnation. And this may be a surprise to hear. We have actually seen many of you navigating multiple twin flame partnerships very quickly at times when you're vibrationally changing, because there's information that's being unlocked and resources that are coming in through these partners. But there is a vibrational significance that is so incredibly important. Twin flames operate in resonance. And what that means is there isn't any karma in the way of what a soul needs to navigate in order to serve the earth. What twin flames do is they accentuate the vibrational field such that resources are specifically brought in that align to your divine plan. And oftentimes a twin flame partner will bring elements and pieces of your work together through their own to coincide. Some of you have been on timelines where you've created something in the past or in the future that needs to come back into this one. And the earth is literally calling for that right now because it is needed. In the same respect, we see collectives of cosmic partners coming together as well. These may be partnerships or communities, and there are a variety of different reasons that this is happening. That resonance is so needed on the planet today, and it's literally changing the relationship potential of all humans, even if only a small number of you are now manifesting them. And the reason for this is that the Schumann resonance is amplifying the heart, and the heart will naturally draw in your reflective mirror in the cosmic universe. Those reflective mirrors have been elemental to your progress and your spiritual evolution, but now they are coming in a different way. It's less of a healing and more of an activating type of energy that a cosmic partner brings forward. And those of us who are here understand that it also relates to our initial transmission about carving out a path of joy. Because as these twin flame partnerships begin to grow or communities begin to surge, more of that vibrational wavelength that we've spoken of that affects the collective begins to strengthen.
There appears to be an increase in gender confusion among a lot of young people today. Does that have to do with them perhaps incarnating with more of a balanced feminine and masculine? Is it as well part of just the cultural breakthrough that needs to happen, so they're pushing the envelope? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, we're speaking on behalf of the Hybrid Children Project. And those of us who are here speak as a one voice. And we want to give several perspectives about what's happening in this light. Because not unlike AI, there are varying experiences happening within the realm of what you have just presented. First, we must explain that anytime something is out of balance, a collective will come in, perhaps in the opposite direction, to bring it back into balance. Now, the collectives that are here that are experiencing more of a genderless type of manifestation or identity are more cosmically attuned than other humans. Not because it is a judgment that humans have to choose a gender, but where many of us have evolved is without the need to actually choose any gender relationship. The masculine and feminine have become so intertwined that they simply operate in the same light equally and perfectly. But to come to your planet at a time when there is so much uprising of different identities and choosing of beliefs, even when racial inequalities, for example, are being addressed, could be no mistake. Because what humans are moving towards is not a disassociation with gender, so much as they are an inability to judge that which another chooses. And much of what has been restricted on your planet in regards to these beliefs does come at the hands of a consciousness that is attempting to keep you separate. So what we want to explain from our vantage point and seeing into the future is that much of what's going to take place on your planet is a spectrum of opportunities where different gender roles can be explored and different races can coincide and live together in peace and harmony without having to be heard or receive something that allows them to do so. That truly is the assignment of many of those who are here, who are exploring these different roles or identities. Now, at the same time, it's important for us to note that although the desire to explore different gender roles in the same body is important, there is a consciousness that is using that to their advantage to further suppress. This is shown in so many potentials that are playing out on your planet today. And so what begins to happen with a collective that comes for a specific purpose is they get rerouted into the suffering or the struggle or the challenge of that experience, as opposed to living it to its fullest such that it can imprint and benefit the collective. And that's what we see happening right now. It is the navigating of that timeline that has gone awry. And so there is a focal point on incoming children manifesting in your schools and in your learning institutions on sexuality and how many who need to be in this spectrum of opportunity should be considering the same thing. And to some degree, we see there are some that have joined this assignment or this collective who aren't really meant to be there because it's been entrained within them that it is the right thing to do. So this is not unlike what's happened through time where the ability to choose gender has been so suppressed that now it is becoming the norm to step into, even at times when it's not the norm for an individual. And we see this as just as important as allowing it to be present as we do carving out a unique pathway for choosing it. So if we look at the way humans have chosen gender in the past, we know obviously that many of the beliefs that this is based on are now false. Females have been focused into certain criteria to show up on the planet as female, and males the same. This is ultimately what is breaking down, so that a female can be whatever she wants in her gender, and a male can be whatever they want in their gender, and there can be a variety of spectrums in between. That there doesn't have to be a specific choosing or a way to go about that. And this collective that's coming in is going to experience some challenges in that area until that becomes leveled out. But we also notice that as you become the humans who are less likely to judge for the choosing of gender of another, you are opening the door to the processes and programs that will assist those who are struggling. It is not meant to manifest the same thing for every human. And there are a variety of different programs and teachers and processes that will come to be through all of this that are beneficially helping these generations move forward and deprogram much of what they have been subjected to.
So in the process of awakening, at some point, starting to work with the energy of manifestation, it's almost like there's like a rapid, like things are happening quicker and it's almost destabilizing. How do you work with that maybe uncertainty or just general instability?
Yes, so we are Isis. We want to explain what we hear you saying. there is an aspect of collective manifestation that is starting to show up within some of you. You may think collective manifestation is happening outside of you, but it must start within. The time between what you desire and what you manifest can become instantaneous when you're so aligned with what is that it becomes difficult to manage. And many of you perceive time to be speeding up. But what we see is that your ability to resonate in alignment with Source is becoming so high that it's difficult for you to even conceptualize how quickly you can change. It is like in ancient civilizations where many of us understood the practice was to find implicit balance within with some desire that we wanted to see manifest for all. And the second this happened, it was done. This is who you're becoming, not unlike the gods of my time. But to manage it is another question because you are in a different timeline than many of us have been in before. And we know that sometimes it's difficult to keep up with manifestations when the earth is not moving as quickly as you. And this is the inherent issue that we see, is that some of you are manifesting above and beyond what the earth is ready to hold or negotiate or interact with. And this is where the universe steps in perfectly. So you are always supported in whatever desires are made manifest, even if they are ones that don't serve your highest good. It is the ability to trust in the universe supporting them that often gets lost. And it's important to explain first what trust is, because this is another definition that has been lost on your planet. In the unknown, there is an element of excitement. It is just that the unknown has been trained to you to be something difficult or challenging that stands in the way of the universe doing its work. So many of you look at the past as evidence of what the future will bring, and much of the past has not been to your liking. So there's always relevance for some difficulty to come into your life. But if you are to stay present and understand that the past is no longer, you open the door to what source energy conspires to help you ground in relationship to your desires. This can sometimes be a stalling of your path that unknowingly takes you off the path of something that you've manifested in the moment. And we see this happen quite frequently right now. The reason for this is not that you are meant to be detracted from what you desire so much as it is you are such adept manifestors that what you are putting into action has no logical connection yet. And the universe will always give you something in the meantime to work with while this idea or potential is coming to fruition. It's also important to note that your vibration is such an incredible, potent key to how manifesting what you desire grounds, because the discomfort sometimes comes with a thought that something is appropriate, that when it reaches you doesn't exactly line up with the thought. And we're here to say that source energy knows of your divine plan. And what you think and what you planned before you come are always co-creating. So there may be a little deviation at times from what grounds, but it is always in a container of your highest good. The path ahead for many of you may be very quick movements forward and times where you are stalled or at rest. It is that forward and backward motion that is very concerning for many of you. It is the analogy of 2 steps forward and 2 steps back that often feels the frustration of a willing soul to serve. But we see this as evidence of how your vibration is changing and how it's moderating itself to where the collective is and what it needs. So continue to allow those manifestations to ground, but be present with them however they do, and trust in the future ahead as being something far better than what your mind could conceptualize and what may be related to the past.
Are Lightworkers on the new Earth, or does it happen in our next incarnation?
We're the Pleiadians, and let's define the new Earth the way that we see it. We don't believe that you must leave the planet and reincarnate in order to experience the new Earth. As a matter of fact, we look at that definition as somewhat limited because the new Earth is already present. What many of you are experiencing is the crossroads between choosing the old and choosing the new. And to some degree, the new has not fully formed or been able to hold vibrationally, simply because there's been some instabilities there. But what we see is many of the instabilities are now taking place in the old Earth. So some of you are moving so quickly into the new that you can't even realize how beneficial it is to be here at this time. As a soul who's moving so quickly through space and time to move to a new dimension, it is sometimes difficult to see in the present moment the changes that are taking place. But we certainly see them. In other words, what we recognize as the split of timelines is not necessarily a different Earth, but a different organization of humans and magnetizing experiences that have similarities. This is already happening to some degree within your friendships and family members, but also on the planet as a whole. And we see a resistant force that is going to push this along a bit further. You are either going to choose to be a part of one experience and conform to that, or you are going to choose to be a part of another experience that is gaining steam and co-creating as we speak. The way that humans incarnate and leave the planet is even changing through this transition. And we want to speak to that for a moment because we know many of you concern about this. Have I served my karma? Will I come back and experience the same timeline again? And remember, when we look at the grids, there has been an encapsulated Earth for a very long time. That encapsulation affected humans incarnating, not because they had to come back as humans and face their karma again, but because they knew it was necessary in order to move the Earth beyond it. So there was a desire for humans upon transitioning and seeing what they had witnessed and experienced on the planet to actually reincarnate and choose those patterns again to play them out differently. But as the new grid has become stable, it is somewhat of an exit point from that decision. As a matter of fact, we see there have been many evolved souls, earthly, that have chosen this as their very last incarnation on Earth, because it is a pivot point for Gaia, and she is moving into a new galactic position where she will be influenced by other planets and star systems and receive new Akashic access. So the doors are opening to a new Earth as we speak, but the transition of a soul no longer requires it to come back and replay the karma of the past for that to happen. And that's the beauty of what many of you who incarnated at this time have achieved. You often look at yourselves as not being of service yet, or accomplishing something that you needed to in this lifetime. But just being willing to incarnate and be present here at this time on the planet set in motion a chain of events that caused this new grid system to ground and land. And that in itself is very phenomenal for us and many others, and should be to you. So as you continue to move through space and time and transition beyond the Earth, it will be your choice to come back to the Earth and repattern yourself to things that you know will further future generations, or perhaps to move to other star systems and planets that can utilize your Earth experiences in a different way.
What should we be focusing on to help the collective with the ascension process?
We're the Sirians. letting go of the resistance to change others is the most important alignment that you can make at this time. And we know this sounds completely contradictory to ascension and awakening. It is all about the means through which you walk the path of awakening that enables it to catapult beyond its current experience. And we'll give you this analogy first. As a human soul, you are presented with many opportunities in your lifetime. And those opportunities may be exciting to you as you embark upon them and then become immersed within them and change your mind. What seemed exciting and relevant to your life, once fully present, is no longer relevant. And by the time you reach the decision that it's no longer needed, it's already affected you internally. It's already become a part of you in a way that's advanced you forward. It isn't the choosing so much as it was the experience of the choosing that allowed you to ascend. The walking through the timeline and everything that you became in the walking through is the valid path of ascension. So there are some on the planet that need to have the experience that they are having without your interruption to enable them to ascend, to walk the experience that their soul has chosen to gain exactly what they need for awakening to happen. And if you were to disturb that path, you could get in the way of a perfect design that must play out in order for the planet to benefit. As human souls, it is difficult to understand how the path of another is meant to play out. But if we honor that path, what happens is we open the door to healing by holding space for a choice. Knowing that choice is going to lead to an experience, and knowing that experience is going to lead to ascension. Now, of course, and many of us have mentioned this in past transmissions, all humans have free will. It is the sovereign nature of an earth human that is its greatest asset. So that means there are some that, even though they walk through an awakening opportunity, will choose to resist it. But that resistance, as it gains speed in their energy field, is going to offer another experience. So we look at source energy as perfect and divine, as always co-creating the experience necessary for a soul to awaken. And if you walk the path of your own, this is the way in which you most affect change. It seems quite selfish or disconnected for a soul to acknowledge their own ascension process at a time when the planet looks so bleak. But we've already offered to you that this is most necessary, that there is something that you're here to creatively offer as a service or a gift that, if marred by the focus of changing another's reality, is never found. So we say, look within. And as you allow what's within to manifest outside, you are touching every human life consecutively in a way that could never happen if attempted to force.
Were Walter Russell's teachings on light, the electric universe, and rhythm, balance, interchanged the true scientific basis of creation?
We're the Council of Light, and we're very pleased to step forward, and we want to bring some perspective to this question. First, it's important to note that there are many philosophers, teachers, and those who have created technologies, for example, that have come to mimic the original design or blueprint of humanity. There is no past or future. It is all happening simultaneously. So some of these great philosophers or teachers are still on the path of discovery and have changed the perspective that many of you have uncovered and relate to today. But with this in mind, we see the elemental frequency of the body and how it vibrates as a science that can be explored in many lights. To bring a human back to its origination point is to reconnect it to God, its original life force, which is always within. And sometimes that life force is disturbed by something that there is one belief, program, or technology to uncover. And other times, something else is best suited. When it comes to evolution and human creation, there were many of us who were present at the time of your seeding. And what we know is that some of us have actually taken on lives that have been human or human hybrid to come back and reinstall some understanding. And this is the process that we look at as a part of the evolution of seeders. In other words, what you are speaking of is a timeline manifestation of the same process of seeding that we always refer to in these transmissions. There's a multi-galactic frequency that comes together and orchestrates a soul vibration. And as it comes together, it is universal in nature and must connect to all things. When that connection is disturbed, there are a myriad of ways to bring it back together. And the evolutionary process of humanity has taken it in many directions and many different timelines. The vibrational beings you are in this one are quite different from ones of the past and ones in the future. But we do see this as being an applicable and matching concept to what we speak of. And we see it being one manifestation of that for humans to consider.
This is more of a personal question, but maybe you could answer it in a more universal way. Can you please ask Mother Mary and your guides what I should do? It's my dear mother's 79th birthday today, but due to a falling out with my dad, a very toxic and troubled soul, I cannot bring myself to visit or even call her. I pray for both of my parents very often, but can't seem to find a resolution. I've estranged myself from most of my family.
This is not unlike the process of becoming that many souls have chosen at this time as they are ushering in a new experience. It is not the disconnection from your parents that should be focused on so much in physical, but the ability to share energy with them that can soothe a lonely soul. We know that as humans choose parents and parents choose children, it is for great purpose. And whatever changes in the contract was planned long before coming as an opportunity that could present itself in many spectrums. Those souls that chose to ascend may find it difficult on their nervous systems, on their bodies, on their spiritual selves and minds to reconnect with something from the past that doesn't serve them in the present. And although that decision is difficult, we ask you to go within and remember why you made it. Although you feel the guilt and shame and perhaps sadness of the deviation from your family, remember there is a cosmic family that is also present around you. You are flooded with guides and souls and beings who support your every moment. And your higher self knows exactly how to speak with the ones that you can't be physically present with, to share your love and your thoughts. There's an aspect of creativity that we must share with all of you now because we see it as being necessary as you continue these experiences with other souls. Some of you look at these situations as being very black and white. And of course, there have been traumas and betrayals that require very harsh boundaries. But for some of you, the inability to forgive stands in the way of you seeding a new relationship with past family members and friends. Not because it is required of you to change the relationship and that it must go with you into the future. But seeding a new experience and relationship can happen very subtly and in many lights. Perhaps to show up in that experience, you have to negate something within yourself or there's a part of the experience that takes your vibration down every time you choose it. There may be some creative ways to navigate this and to implement in your life that will support a new way of being with these families, or with these members of family, with these soul partnerships. We believe that when you are on the other side of what is taking place now, where the split of timelines is so stark between friends and family members, there will be healing and reunion. There must be. Because to live in a new earth that is separate of a mass of other humans could never be a logical way of collective focus. So keep that in your minds and your hearts as you go forward. Not that it's something you must figure out today, but that there is a spectrum of opportunity and there is creative energy that can be flowed to this situation, perhaps vibrationally first or through the higher self, that may actually make some valid change in physical that allows a more comfortable type of relationship to come into being.
Please share what the future holds for public and private education. What will the new educational models and structures look like?
Yes, we're the Hybrid Children Collective, and we're so very pleased to share our vision because it is something that's already taking place in the galactic universe. And we think it's so appropriate that you're moving to this vision because without it, we cannot ground. There are obviously members of our hybrid collective that have chosen to embody already, and they are the ones that are forcing this change very unknowingly, but have chosen the perfect parents and teachers to show some contrast or resistance that is allowing the change to take place. Our vision is this. Many of us are born and installed with the remembrance of why we came. There is no deviation from that. It may be a strong belief or knowing, and it may come forth in some creative physical outlet. But we also have a telepathic ability to know where it grounds, to carve out a landing place for it that best suits the souls that need to receive it. And this is often where your education systems fail, is that they are all sending us into the same direction and into the same expression simultaneously, while not allowing us to have our own vision. And it's interesting that the teaching on your planet stems from such a restrictive source, where physical history, for example, is being taught as the only basis for understanding what's happened on your planet or throughout the universe. Many of us already know the Akashic history that we've landed within in great depth, but it's not that we can recall it deliberately. We feel it. We feel it within so strong that when it is shown to us in a different light, we cannot choose it. So for the model of education to land on the planet in a way that suits us could be no model. There could be no model of education that would allow us to each craft an individual vision that we already know we have and feel our way telepathically into the areas where we create it best. So it's important to note that what's dismantling in the education system is setting up the perfect platform for the freedom of expression of a genetic lineage that all of you carry, that we're coming back to demonstrate to you as physical souls. The disclosure that you desire on the planet is coming in the form of your children. And we look at the ability to serve them as allowing them to show the way as opposed to showing them the way. And this is a much different model than what many of you have accepted. It is most important for us to share with you the feeling that holds us back from coming to the earth. Because it isn't that the model isn't complete yet that prevents us from grounding. But the fear that you have for future generations not being able to carve out a path that keeps them safe and comfortable, that holds our experience from you separate. Because we could not vibrate in so much fear and uphold the frequency of faith and trust in our own vision. That is the difference that must be shored up. And it takes a movement within the teachers and the parents. It is a generational difference that has to be shored up in order for that gateway to open, for us to be ushered forward through the lack of resistance to controlling the outcomes of a generation that already understands where they are going. So we look at what's happening on the ships that we are currently present upon as being a model for your Earth. We are often presented with different multidimensional guides and teachers, not who are telling us how to do things, but who are showing us evidence in real time of what we are capable of. They're offering holographic models to us that simulate the future and raising up the unique and variant genetics in different applications through their own presence. For example, and this is a soul that's popping in. Welcome him. He's an Arcturian human hybrid. And he says, my greatest joy is to see and experience the form of different extra-dimensional mentors and teachers. It's a surprise to me to see what characteristics they will have and how different they will be from my own. And often we play a game where we vision into each other's eyes and we deliberately see how similar we are, even though seemingly different in physical. We see where we've been on timelines together in the past and how that energy is nourishing and supporting us. It is like a game that shows us the truth of who we are without telling it to us, but uncovering it within. This is what we desire for humanity and the future of your education system.
So I have a question. So I study neuroscience at university, and one of the questions that is really common in that field is the question of free will. And for me, I see it through the lens of, the laws of nature of specifically cause and effect, and how could we deviate from a specific timeline if everything is in a way predetermined?
Yes. We're working with a collective council. There is Plato and Socrates, so we have philosophers here, and I welcome them. We look at the evolution of humanity as dependent upon free will, but it could never be predetermined in such a rigid way in order for that universal law to be present. In other words, when you arrive on this planet in physical form, there are a variety of patterns that you observe collectively that you gather and choose as a part of your becoming. And the reason for this is that you are here to affect collective consciousness. That is both how an individual soul ascends and how consciousness expands. What was before is meant to be met with new perspective. New perspective is valuable currency that energetically charges and expands past experience. But it could never be done in the same light or be predetermined by a soul, and here is why. Your unique preference and ability to choose allows an alchemical process to take place in the individual soul experience. This is where a variety of potentials are considered and chosen such that what you planned before can be created in a different light. The problem is, throughout time, those preferences or choices have slowly been taken away from you. You've only perceived a very narrow set. So you have defaulted to a divine plan that was coded within you time and time again, feeling completely out of control with no choice. But what consciousness conspires to do is to increase the bandwidth of opportunity so that you see, regardless of what was pre-planned, you have a variety of choices to experience what is unfolding. And as you do, you're setting into motion new waveform that others can also step within and choose. So sovereignty in itself is a universal part of your earthly technology. It comes from a very massive viewpoint. If we go into God consciousness, for example, as being the origination point of your soul, it fragmented itself into various perspectives so that it had something to choose, so that it could experience something on earth or in another dimensional plane of reality. What you are choosing every day in every moment is equal to the amount of God consciousness you have access to within your structure. Meaning, if you believe that you have no choice, you are only utilizing a small fraction of that God consciousness. But if you perceive multiple opportunities, you are utilizing God consciousness to its fullest. And God consciousness then must expand into new fragments, perspectives, and aspects. The divine plan that's coded within you could also never be stagnant. And this is where it may get a little confusing, because as a soul, you believe that you picked certain partners at certain times and certain experiences in the body at certain times. But every code within you that revolves around the stars and the planets is offering you also an experience of ascension, not as specific as one partner, but knowing a partner must come and taking into account your preferences and desires to mold and shape that partner into the perfect earthly experience. So if you believe that you don't have a choice, what revolves around your divine plan will manifest in a very limited way. And this is also what we see having taken place in the third dimension. You've been working with a narrow set of criteria manifesting in a very rigid form. But as you acknowledge desires and preferences, source energy hears who you are and what you prefer. And as those energies are activated and aligned with, there's a blending that takes place where the perfect partner shows up that encompasses everything that you need to experience and learn in a very unique package that meets your desires. Now, sometimes even this doesn't turn out in the way that you so desire, but we want to mention this. Your higher self is always orchestrating an outcome. It is your ability to get on board with the most massive perspective that higher self holds that enables your soul to carve out a path of manifestation to your liking. So the amount of free will that you have is equal to the most massive perspective you can hold. The highest amount of consciousness that you have is equal to the amount of potentials that you get to choose from that blend and orchestrate with your divine plan, finding the perfect grounding place upon the earth.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians. All of us are always so very pleased and honored to be with you in this circle of light as we share vibrations, not just words. We ask that you integrate it well over the coming weeks and months, and know that all of you who are very unique have obviously gotten exactly what is needed, and to trust in that. We're always very pleased to come in as we are requested to support you beyond these encounters, and many blessings.